What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday night. I am Josh McCarty. This is Bills Chat Live. With me, as always, is Luka. Luka, the Bills have a head coach. How you doing tonight?
Better late than never. I'm doing good. It's a winter wonderland outside still out here in the Western New York area. Letting the dog in through a blizzard. I don't want to call it blizzard because it's just whipping wind with snow primarily. But doing good on this Wednesday night. I will say a night's rest has definitely subsided the disappointment shock value of what we're going to be obviously discussing tonight and where the Bills decided to go after doing what they will probably tell us tomorrow during a press conference. An extensive coach search found them believing that the resolution to this was in-house. But what I will be intrigued in most, to get right out of the way, is will Terry Pagula be sitting at that table, and or will he have a mic in front of him? Not even, and I'm saying that, by the way, not even because of the previous press conference. I'm just saying, because is he going to answer more questions as to how we ended up here or not? And it's just, and spoiler, as Josh nods, no, like hopefully no.
No.
But then also at the same time, I would be very intrigued to hear. I would love to hear the PR version of how he would explain this from an owner. And because I would love to be then reading between the lines as to his rationale and reasoning for doing this hire, because me in my head, and I believe in a lot of other fans' heads, there is a pretty clear reason as to why Terry likes the Joe Brady hire. And it might have to do with a little bit of a dollars and cents situation. Yeah, this is the reality we live in now as Bills fans, that Joe Brady is officially our head coach.
So you don't like the hire?
We can, you know what? We can
we'll get
dive
into
into it more.
Okay, so I, like many of you, like Luka, I had my heart set on other names. Now, let's see. What up, guys? Just post it in chat, Nico. We appreciate you, but neither one of us are monitoring Twitter right now. If you want to post it in chat, we'll try to get to it tonight as we roll along. Appreciate Ismail's hanging out tonight. We saw our guy Costa hanging out tonight. We already have quite a few in chat, so hopefully if you guys are snowed in, we can entertain you here on this Bills Coach show. All right. When the Bills hired Joe Brady, I, like many of you, had, I think, my heart set on something new. And why something new? Because everything the Bills have really done under McBean is something old or something already in-house. And we've seen it with promotions of offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. And it almost felt like Christmas morning, where it's like, ooh, like, I'll raise my hand. 2 weeks ago, I never could have told you who Grant Udinski was, but after researching him, when he became a list on the Bills' name, I was very much interested in him. Or Clint Kubiak, or whatever, something different. And that's not where the Bills landed. The Bills landed on Joe Brady. But Luka, I have landed on, and we're going to get into, why this is a skeptical hire, why the good, the bad, with the why, and why it could work, why it may not work, yada, yada. But I think I've come to a point of how I could explain why we feel the way it is, why we feel the way we do, but also explain that maybe we're overreacting as a fan base. So let me try this on and see how it feels for you. Okay, so we're just going to use Clint Kubiak as an example. All due respect to Udinski and the other guys in the race that had never called plays before, I think Clint Kubiak was probably considered the best overall candidate out there, name value for Bills fans. Okay, and why is that? Well, there's a lot of things on your checklist for a head coach that I think were appealing to Bills fans. One, I think the new thing is young offensive mind. I think, you look at Sean McDermott, you look at Kyle Shanahan, young offensive mind. Well, Clint Kubiak's a 38-year-old offensive coordinator. Joe Brady's a 36-year-old offensive coordinator. That's just 2 years. That doesn't have to mean anything. Let's talk about what their offenses did this year. If you want to just talk about as simple as points scored, Clint Kubiak's offense scored 51 touchdowns. Joe Brady's offense scored 62. You want to talk about EPA per play? Clint Kubiak's offense scored 13th in EPA per play. Joe Brady's was third. They both have been offensive coordinators now for 3 years. Joe Brady 2.5, took over halfway for Dorsey, but tomato, tomato. And I know we were all mesmerized watching the Seahawks put on a show in the NFC Championship game against the Rams. I feel that. It felt like they were just coming up with ways to scheme JSN open, and it was great to watch, and it was an offensive display. They scored 31 points at home against the Rams, and it was a great display. Joe Brady's offense scored 30 points on the road against the Denver Broncos, who were widely considered one of the best defenses in the sport. And they did so on a day when Joe Brady's offense turned the ball over 5 times, none of which were his fault. Like, Josh Allen fumbles the ball at the end of the half. I don't think Joe Brady's the one that's pounding the table to say, let's go for it. I think that was a Sean McDermott call. And then Josh Allen has to wear that one. And on a day where James Cook fumbles when they're already across midfield going in to score, on a day where Josh Allen fumbles twice, throws an interception on a ball that hits Brandon Cooks in the hands, they still score 30 points. And I'm also thinking, Luka, about the play to Mecole Hardman that they didn't connect on. That wasn't a Joe Brady issue. That was a Josh Allen / Mecole Hardman issue. I'm thinking about the screen pass to Khalil Shakir. I know, screen pass. On the Bills' second to last offensive drive of the game, where they're up by 1, trying to go up by 8. Shakir walks in for a touchdown, but Josh Allen has bad ball placement. That's not a Joe Brady issue. That's a Josh Allen issue. Joe Brady's offense was dynamite in the playoffs with practice squad receivers against the defending defensive player of the year in the secondary and 2 of the best pass rushers in the sport. And the last part of this, I know we're all going to get back to wide receiver, and I think it's a chicken and egg argument. Do you want to blame Joe Brady for not getting wide receivers involved, or do you want to give him credit for having a top-notch offense despite the fact that he was handed basically chicken bleep at wide receiver? You can spin that any way you want to, but the Clint Kubiak argument that I think most people lean on is JSN was a good player in the sport last year in 2024. He was a good receiver. He was well thought of. He was the best receiver in the sport, arguably up there with Puka, Jamar Chase, like in that conversation after a year with Clint Kubiak. Okay. Joe Brady's resume is not shabby either. He has the defending NFL MVP. Josh Allen was a superstar when Joe Brady got his hands on him. I'm going to not give him all that credit. James Cook went from being decent running back to leading the NFL in touchdowns and then leading the NFL in yards in back-to-back years. So again, his resume is absolutely qualified to be promoted to head coach this cycle. My theory, Luka, if everything about Joe Brady was exactly the same, but the last team in his bio wasn't Buffalo Bills, it was Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Minnesota Vikings, pick a team, any team, we would be thrilled by this hire. The fact that it's the in-house offensive coordinator from a team that promoted Ken Dorsey when they had an opening, promoted Joe Brady when they had an opening, promoted Bobby Babbitt when they had an opening, promoted Brandon Beane to president. We need linemen, let's go to Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips. Oh, we need linebackers, let's go to Balin Spector and AJ Klein off the couch. Oh, we need a defensive back, let's see what Josh Norman's up to. The team that lives in the familiar went with familiar. And fans are sick and tired of familiar. And I feel that. We are sick and tired of it. You ran the coach out for reasons that I am starting to respect because something needed to change, and you went with familiar, and fans are tired of it, and Joe Brady's getting zero benefit of the doubt here, and I don't think it's about Brady. I think it's much more about Beane and Pagula. Benefit of the doubt, gone. But if we can get past the fact that none of us were going to accept this familiarity and just look at who they hired and the resume he brings, I can wrap my arms around him being a very qualified candidate. I think it's just that familiarity piece that fans are having a hard time stomaching right now.
The thing that I can't get my head around or the we'll call it the primary reason that I feel upset with this hire decision is kind of based on two pillars. And the first pillar is simply, I don't want to hear tomorrow, for instance, that they had an extensive coaching search. Because if you are trying to tell the media and your fan base and everyone involved that this was an extensive coaching search, that's just a flat out lie, considering you didn't talk to all of what feels like the available options. There are, of course, the issues and hurdles you have when it comes to, the Kubiak discussion, others that are involved as well, where you had to wait until the conference championship weekend to resolve, and or now for Kubiak's sake, wait until the Super Bowl ends. So you're getting into February. Fully recognized and understood that. But if one of the hottest names out there is Kubiak, and you truly want to make sure you did an extensive search, which feels like a no stone left unturned situation, you're leaving a pretty massive boulder out there that hasn't even been looked at. Which, okay, you can sell me that you did a bunch. You can't wait until mid-February. We went with the best available option, but this now brings me to my second pillar of problem. You sit there and have a press conference where you are basically driving the message of change is needed. Change. The word change was said multiple times by ownership, by GM, things of that nature. While the irony of that press conference itself is you did not clean house, you just changed one person. And then on top of it now, fast forward a week, and you kept the in-house option as your head coach. Explain to the fan base and media how that is change. That is minimal change. You are tripling down. You are absolutely putting all your chips on the fact that McDermott was the sole issue with everything going on, because your GM remains, all the staff underneath him, I would imagine, remains. And then the OC and half of the system that we would see on the field, the one that was in charge of running your crown jewel side of the ball, is now your head coach. And you were not willing to change and bring in what felt like a nice option in Udinski, or even whether you liked it or not, bringing back the familiarity, although it left and came back option of Brian Daboll, was still something that felt like it was enough change, because you're at least trying to almost go back to what you felt like was a more successful, exciting time for your quarterback. While there's still that familiarity aspect, it is more of a change than what we are saying was from this past season. So that is where, to me, the biggest issue with all of this is, and something that just feels incredibly difficult to move beyond. Mm-hmm. What I do love about I think it was about 7-minute talk there, right to lead off, though, is the first part of what you're talking about is absolutely valid. And I think it is definitely something that most individuals, rightfully or wrongfully, it doesn't matter, just don't want to acknowledge that it does feel like Joe Brady's resume is still credible enough. I mean, it's not as if they manufactured this interest in him around league circles. Like, no, it was widely known that Joe Brady's name was coming across the desk of other teams out there while coaching vacancies were there and present. That is a known thing. That was happening last season, and it was happening again this season. It's been in the space. Joe Brady's been a name that's been out there since, everyone's kind of making fun of it. I've even seen memes about it since the 2019 national championship, when you saw Joe Burrow throwing it to Chase and everything like that. The offense was incredible, and everyone's like, this is a guy to watch. Get it. I understand. But that is something that it felt as if the process was just a touch too rushed to get to that resolution. Now, Joe Brady also feels, if, let's say, they were going through this, and this is where my head is at when it comes to, how you could have probably had not the crazy reaction. If you were satisfied with Joe Brady as your option, you could almost have it sitting there as if, he's still there at that moment in time. Let's just make sure we understand everything going on. And unless Kubiak blows us away on February 9th, 10th, whatever it will be, that you could come in, then it's like, now we're offering Joe Brady. And what has changed in that time? I know there's obviously, just getting past it as one, getting his direction as a head coach and CEO moving forward too, like things like that you can't quite do because you're tipping your hand to him, and it would be wrong to him as a professional to have him do that, even though he's not officially the head coach. But at the same time, he's in the building, he's understanding the image, he has conversations with Bean while doing other things. You can understand, who the person is. It's not like you're going to miss a step because you took 2 more weeks just to double check a couple more options weren't the right one. That's where I think also it's just leaving a bad taste in the mouth of, hey, you know what? We thought this option was the best moving forward. As that change, we've told you all, and we're not willing to risk another couple weeks of just making sure any other candidate is not someone we feel fit better. And it's not necessarily the safe option. It's far from it in some regards, in my opinion. But at the same time, it's a safe option in the sense of, who you're getting. You've had him in the building. There's, you mentioned familiarity. It's clear as day. It's there. And it's this press conference tomorrow is going to be fascinating to me because I want to hear the words now of Bean after the fact and just see what his vision is, because this is the most important decision for Bean. That's like Bean's job is on the line, and he's doubled down himself even by saying the guy that I had at offensive coordinator, or we had at offensive coordinator, that's the guy I love now to be my hand in hand head coach. And we're going to be this, we're going to be working in sync. We're going to be doing things in sync and personnel decisions and everything like that. The head coach will be on the same page as me. It's like you are truly now putting everything on the line when it comes to your job and career with the Bills on a 36-year-old, never been head coach guy that was in-house as your option, and you didn't necessarily take the long process that it feels like you definitely could have, because the Bills was, I don't know if you'd call them the premier job out of the 10 that were available at one point, but they were absolutely up there just thanks to number 17. And you only kind of did a handful of interviews, went through the motions, and ended up on the thing that felt like was the joke and meme. As soon as you fired McDermott, it's like, watch, we're going to just hire and promote Joe Brady as it is. That was a joke in group text with friends. That was a joke on Twitter, whatever it is. It's now that's your reality. So as much as we're going to talk about this coach and what, maybe the coaching staff will look like underneath Joe Brady tonight and everything, I will say my number one focus will be noon tomorrow, listening to anyone that is going to talk about this hire, listening to Joe Brady, but listening to Brandon Beane and understanding what the thought process was and ultimately coming to this decision, because it's head scratching from a surface standpoint in the sense of, did you really do your due diligence to make sure this was the best option moving forward? Because there's the other caveat to it all is the one thing that truly scratches my head on this situation is 5 years. You immediately are locking him in for 5 years, 5-year term. If Joe Brady does not get to the goal that we need to in the next 2 years, what are those other 3 years for? What are you going to keep Joe Brady past 2 years of not making a Super Bowl? Like, that's, to me, that's the ultimate, like, I understand you want to do security, and that's probably, there's some, within the business that 5 years is a typical term, but this is not a 5-year project. This is a 2-year, you better make it happen. That's what Josh Allen's turning 30. Like, you have him in the back end prime of his career. Now you need to be you fired the other coach because you just quite couldn't get over the hump. And now your decision is to go to him, and you gave him a 5-year term.
Yeah.
This is not a 5-year gig. This is a 2-year gig. And Terry's going to have to bite a bullet if they don't make a Super Bowl in 2 years, because if he doesn't fire a Joe Brady after 2 years of failure, if that's where it comes, then I'm really questioning what the hell everything is going on up above, because then truly what matters to you as an owner, what matters to the GM when you are doing things in that nature and telling things of a different story.
I do think the 5-year contract is pretty standard, and I want to say that's similar to what Rex Ryan signed with the Bills, and he was fired 2 years into it. I don't think it would be some sort of a barrier to prevent the Bills from firing Brady if they get to a point where they need to. I want to go back to, I think you posted it in chat here.
I did, yeah.
Nico's question. You can talk about this question on your show. So the question is, do you consider a failure of the season if blank doesn't happen next year? It's an interesting question, Nico, because on one hand, you could simplify it and say Sean McDermott was fired because he didn't make it to the Super Bowl, particularly this year when the path was as clear as it's ever been. But I think it's also important to realize that since Josh Allen became elite in 2020, Sean McDermott had 6 kicks at it to get there. And there's been blowout losses to the Chiefs and the Bengals, heartbreaking, mind-numbing losses to the Chiefs and the Broncos. And so I think it was the cumulative 6 losses that McDermott had, not just the fact that they lost to the Broncos this year. I think to me, the baseline for success this year is not going backwards. And the Bills have a very defined line in the sand of what they have done. They have consistently made the playoffs and made it to at least the second round since 2020. So if they were to make the playoffs next year and lose in the first round, or make the playoffs or miss the playoffs next year, that would be a serious decline, a backwards step. Now, you could say they took a step backwards this year because they didn't win the division. They had to go on the road the first game. I get that. I hear that. But I do think that would be a failure. I think the messaging is pretty clear from One Bills Drive this week, Luka, at least last 2 weeks. I think whether we want to hear it, whether fans want to hear it, it's very clearly they believe Sean McDermott was the problem. They have gone out of their way, publicly and by their actions, to essentially remove him from the situation and keep pushing forward. Now, there will be a new defensive coordinator in-house. Bobby Babich has signed as a positional coach with the Green Bay Packers today. And, there will be a new offensive line coach. There'll be a new special teams coach because he went to Miami. And there's going to be a new offensive coordinator, kind of. Joe Brady's going to call the plays. So things are going to look different.
Yeah.
I want to go back up, though. I think this is where my head's at right now. And there's really just no way to know until you get to the free agency and draft season. But I think Sam's question is fascinating. Do the Bills stay status quo? Do they really lean into everybody eats and think we can have the Mecole Hardmans, the 6 games of Joshua Palmer, whatever Curtis Samuel gives us, signing Brandon Cooks and Elijah Moore off the street? Or do they really turn it around and try to get good weapons? They took a pretty big swing with Keon Coleman. They used their first pick in the draft on Keon Coleman, but I love the way that Jeremy White talked about it today on WGR. They took one swing and left the batter's box. The Seahawks had a guy on pace to be the leading receiver in the sport and still at the trade deadline traded for Rashid Shaheed. You see the Rams, they have Puka Nacua in-house and still went out and signed Devontae Adams. I'm not giving you the Bengals example because people can throw it back to you. Yeah, what did the Bengals won? These are 2 teams that people thought were the 2 best teams in the sport. The biggest issue, I don't have an issue with the Bills missing on Keon Coleman. The draft is a gamble. That's why I want more kicks at the can. My issue with the Bills is why is Keon Coleman the only top 100 pick spent on the wide receiver position in the entire Brandon Beane era? That is malpractice. And as Jeremy White and Joe DiBiase point out as well as anybody, these mid-tier wide receiver contracts that you've signed to Curtis Samuel and Joshua Palmer, and even dating back to like Cole Beasley, who ended up being a steal, and John Brown, you're signing these like second and third tier wide receivers to 8-figure deals, and it just eats up too much of your cap for what you can get replacement level value by spending second and third round picks in the draft. And look at the Packers. Do the Packers have a defined number one? Not really. I mean, Christian Watson, when healthy, is pretty fantastic. Reed is a gamer. Dobbs is a good player. He's available this offseason. They did get the kid first round in the draft this
Matthew
year.
Golden.
Yeah, Golden. So I mean, they have a nice group, but these are all small investments. The Bills haven't even made like the small rookie investment. So my head's right where Sam's head is, and I see you nodding your head too, Luka. Are we going to learn, or are the Bills going to tell us, whether we can believe it or not, that it was in fact Sean McDermott who was the one that was like, no, let's just run the ball. Everybody eats. We can't afford receivers. Because the messaging from McDermott would lead you to believe that he was the direct opposite. He was the guy that could not stop mentioning Jacoby Myers before the playoff game and could not stop mentioning how they needed more explosive plays in the passing game, and how he when asked if he believed it was a Super Bowl roster, he didn't say yes. He said, I love these guys. I think Sean McDermott pretty much told you without telling you that he kind of aligned with us, but I do wonder if the Bills have a philosophical shift. I sure hope they do, because it's cool that you can say you went to Denver and scored 30 points with practice squad receivers and guys who were on the street 3 weeks ago, but that's no way to live. Like, let's get guys that can get open, beat coverage, and really make you pay and put you in that bind that a quarterback like Josh Allen is supposed to put you in, where it's like, is he going to run? Is he going to throw? And we got to put 2 guys on this guy. And now we have the NFL leading rusher behind him. Like, hello. The Bills don't need 5 receivers to make this thing work, but they need a guy. And that's where my head's at. Where do you sit on what you think that the Bills' philosophy might be going forward?
You brought up examples of where Joe Brady's offense was successful. It's just the pieces within the offense let him down. And obviously a lot of it was highlighted earlier when it comes to placing the blame on Josh Allen, rightfully so for the most part. What I think the lasting effect of this previous season is that Denver game. And when you highlight the things like that Mecole Hardman play prior to the Brandon Cooks play, the Brandon Cooks play itself, the situation, that entire game, this offense scored 30 points. We've mentioned it numerous times already. This offense scored 30 points, and it was a grind to get 30 points. Mm-hmm. It was clear as day. Josh Allen felt like he needed to do everything he possibly could because of the offense. And that's not because of his offensive line. That's not because of the running back standing either behind him or next to him. He understands how good those players are. You have a couple guys that he likes and trusts in Kincaid and Shakir. But at the same time, it's like that can only get you so far. And it would be irresponsible to not look at that. Look at the entire body of work that is this previous season. Look at your roster management and understand that the one glaring thing that could make your life so much easier is to finally do something about that boundary receiver position. Do something that will truly allow it to be a thing that Josh Allen, Joe Brady calling plays, whatever it is, can lean on a little bit. Trust it will do its job and be the guy it can. And then from there, everything will evolve. You know, for whatever reason, they just didn't want to do that, whether it was financially or just because they were scarred from having an alpha like a Diggs in there that may have been in the huddle on the sidelines demanding a little bit too much. And all of a sudden it took him getting, into verbal altercations, friendly altercations with Mike Vrabel to finally shut him up sometimes and get him to be on the same page with someone else. Well, whatever root cause that has been there that they don't want to do this, I think last season showed them, and I would love to believe that Bean is not stupid enough to triple down on this. Mm-hmm. They are going to do something. Whether you want to believe the rumors or not, they clearly were in on targets at the trade deadline. Jalen Waddle was the one name that was brought up, that it just took, for whatever reason, a tinker that Bean was not comfortable with to not make that move happen. But imagine what this offense would be like even with a Jalen Waddle when healthy. I think Bean, even in that moment, recognized something was necessary. He just didn't like the value that was happening in season to do that, and the risk of whatever it was just was not enough for him. But that to me was a sign of recognition and understanding that something will happen to this receiver group. And that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, essentially, going into this offseason. We are going to have another offseason of draft prep, Josh, where we are talking about all the receiving targets we love in the draft. We're going to have another offseason talking about potential trade targets and free agents that we could bring in when it comes to the receiver position. I believe, though, this will be the first time it feels like in many years where something might actually happen and one of those guys, or maybe multiples of those guys, will be on this roster come opening day September. That is, I firmly believe that. I think it's a little bit, I don't know. I feel like I'm insane thinking it, because what body of evidence tells me otherwise? As you laid it out so perfectly, McDermott felt like the message that he wanted it, and then now you fired him and the other people involved, they're still there. So why am I supposed to sit here and trust the people that said our receivers are good enough? We had the number one offense with these guys, like things like that. And they are still the ones making these decisions, whereas the guy who clearly was calling it out a little bit in a very professional manner during press conferences is no longer here. He doesn't have a job anymore. So it's do I want to believe the facts of anything like that? Or do I want to believe the idea that a move almost happened at the trade deadline? There's clearly something going on when it comes to Bean and those individuals still making these decisions that recognize the receivers aren't good enough and they want to make a move. I would like to lean to that side and be like, hey, 2 years of this shit is done. We need a guy, another alpha, another dude out there to make Josh's life easier. Because if you do that, you can reduce so many of these things that make Josh feel like he has to put on the cape. He has to do it. And then all of a sudden you have this Denver game again where the highs are great, but those lows will absolutely kill you in crunch time. And you just can't do it anymore. Josh is getting older. He's going to lose a step eventually, and you need to support him with better skill position people all around. That includes the halfback position, which they have currently right now, but then also the skills positions out wide at wide receiver, which are clearly lacking. None of them are capable of doing the job currently on the roster, and you need to address it.
And as you mentioned, I spent the open of the show highlighting all these reasons why Joe Brady is qualified for this job. But now I'm going to say the bad news, and why even his biggest skeptics that don't care about the fact that the Bills hired their offensive coordinator that specifically don't like Joe Brady. There is now a long track record of him getting the worst production out of proven receivers in their career. The stretch where he was mid-season offensive coordinator for Stephon Diggs was the least productive stretch of Stephon Diggs' career.
Yeah.
Khalil Shakir's, I mean, he catches a ton of balls in this offense, relatively speaking to his counterparts in this offense, but his ADOT has dipped from 6.7 to like 2.3 yards per route. It's insane. And those screens, I think a lot of those failed because of Josh Allen's ball placement. That's neither here nor there. Curtis Samuel and Joshua Palmer, again, how much are injuries going to play into this? But had the worst stretch of their career with Joe Brady. Amari Cooper, the worst stretch of his career with Joe Brady. Couldn't get anything out of Elijah Moore. And, I'm not giving you a name like Justin Jefferson or Jalen Waddle here, but, at some point, when you watch the 49ers, I get it. Kyle Shanahan's probably the best in the sport, but when they're playing games without Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall, and, they're making Jawan Jennings look like Terrell Owens every once in a while, it's like, can we not get that? And, the elephant in the room is that you've just seen nothing from Keon Coleman. So that's where Joe Brady really has to improve. And his other critics will say, okay, well, he did great in college when he had Jefferson and Chase and Joe Burrow throwing him the ball, but like, holy cow, I could have called offense for that offense. I think that's, I get that. And then he was kind of like the wonder kid and came into the league under Matt Rule and did well his first year in Carolina with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson both going over 1,000 yards, but then he got fired his second year. And what I would say to that is, I get that he got fired his second year. One, the Matt Rule experiment was a disaster. But two, that was 6 years ago. he's grown a lot since then. I know it's going to sound strange, but in 2002, Jim Fossil benched his offensive play caller because they couldn't move the ball. 6 games into the season, they rattled off a bunch of wins, made the playoffs, and scored many points as anybody in the league. That guy's name was Sean Payton. So young play callers go through stretches where they get benched. If you want to look at Sean McDermott's history in Philadelphia, he got play calling taken away from him on defense. He got demoted from defensive play caller in Philadelphia under Andy Reid back when they had the Michael Vick, LaShawn McCoy Eagles. So it's not weird that happened early in his career. The other thing I'll say optimistically before we start talking about some of these options for coordinators and see what chat's going on, two guys that I know we respect. Now, I think you have to block out a lot of the national noise when it comes to anything Bills related. Like the Stephen A. Smiths, the Cam Newtons, they're going to yell just for the sake of yelling. So they're going to say the thing that Bills fans say on Twitter, like, oh my God, you could have just kept McDermott if you're going to stay familiar, yada, yada, yada. But I get it, but I need somebody, not them, saying that. Dan Orlovsky, when this opening first came open, said that the Bills need to, no matter what happens, keep Joe Brady in the building. And it did feel like as this process went on, if they didn't make him the head coach, they were going to lose him. And maybe that's what ultimately tipped the scales in his favor. The second one is Chris Sims. I caught a little bit about what he said about Joe Brady today, and he said he was his favorite candidate on the entire market, especially for the Bills. And he likes a lot of what Joe Brady's done. He says he's one of the better play callers in the sport. And Chris Sims kind of reiterated what I said, like he's making it work out there with like chicken bleep weapons out there. And Chris Sims has been on this, the Bills are undermanned on offense thing for the longest time. And I agree with him. And that, I know people are screaming, that's a Bean problem. I get it. Like this is the world we're living in, but I get the Bean issue. The other one I'll say is Jordan Palmer. Jordan Palmer is famous for being the guy that Josh Allen worked out with in the offseason, and it really changed his mechanics and all that. He's really tight with Josh Allen, and he was on, I believe it was Cowherd, and said that the biggest advantage the Bills have right now over any team in the sport is the culture they've built. And he said he's never seen anything like it, but the group of players year in and year out is as tight as any group in the sport, and that doesn't happen by accident. He gives a lot of credit to Josh Allen because he's viewed as one of the boys, which I don't think all quarterbacks are viewed that way. But I do think a lot of that credit has to go to McDermott. I think Brady getting this job was the Bills' best attempt to rid themselves of McDermott while also trying to keep the parts of McDermott around that they liked, i.e. the culture. Brady has grown up a lot in the NFL under Sean McDermott. So you would think that culture-wise, that's how he saw it happen. Maybe he'll keep a lot of that in play. All right, so we know the head coach is Joe Brady, Luka. Right now, I think the biggest decisions for me now is defensive coordinator because Joe Brady has said he's going to call the plays on offense. The names right now that are floating around are Jim Leonard. Adam Schefter reported yesterday that the Bills are going to be very interested in him. He's also getting looks from the LA Chargers. Dallas has been rumored to be in on him, so I would love that. A guy that got brought into the limelight today a little bit was Jim Schwartz, who used to be the Bills' defensive coordinator back under Doug Marrone when Mario Williams was here, and the Bills were the number one defense in the sport that season. Or no. They were number 2 because at Rex's intro press conference, he was like, that's actually kind of disappointing by my standards. And then Rex couldn't stop anybody. God, Rex. Jim Schwartz would be under consideration. And then I always forget the name of the guy who was coaching the Falcons last year. What is his name? Raheem Morris. Thank you.
Yeah.
Raheem Morris. Another guy that's out there, big name that very appealing to me because of the fact that he has head coaching experience. I think that would be really great for Joe Brady. Do either one of those options scratch your itch? Are you at the point where I'm at a point where the Bills are on the clock in the draft and there's 3 receivers there that I like and I just take one. Just take one. Any of them. Just take a receiver. If the Bills come away with one of these guys, I'm going to be thrilled. If I had to power rank them 1 through 3, I'd probably go Jim Schwartz first, and then I'd go Jim Leonard, and then I'd go Raheem Morris. But if they come away with any of those guys, I'm going to sleep like a baby.
Your rankings are my rankings, Josh. We are uniform on this. And yes, you come away with one of those guys, I am a happy person with what is going to happen when it comes to the direction of the defense. And what I mean by that is you are bringing in someone who will have sole eyes responsibility and understanding of what they are trying to get out of the defense. And that is their focus. That is their job. What it felt like for years now you were having was just this interesting struggle when it came to McDermott truly relieving the duties of defense, but then also in key opportunities, key situations, whatever it was, situational football. It's like, pop that timeout. Hey, this is what I want to do. Or relaying that message to Babbage. I'm taking over on this drive. I'm doing this. It felt like you had this a little bit of pull and go situation when it comes to who is truly operating the defense, what is going on. And that's, let me be frank with this. That feels like that's probably a lot more common than you would want it to when it comes to both offensive and defensive minds at the head coaching position. That is, this is their team, this is their job. And on a game day, that's what they want to do. And this is how they want to attack it. And the best way they can relay that message is by doing it themselves. So power to them. It is what it is. But I do think that's just taken away from just the overall picture of what needs to happen and how things can be shut down, whatever. The options you currently have as defensive coordinator that we've been laying out here when it comes to Jim Leonhard, Jim Schwartz, and Raheem Morris, all three of those guys have, two of them at least for sure, when it comes to Morris and Schwartz, have extensive experience with great defenses that know how to do everything, both in the pass run game. They have a great understanding of how to attack things in a different fashion. It's not a singular focus. It's not one mission here. This is our look. This is what we live and die in. And I'll be honest, Schwartz, the idea of Schwartz, just I refuse to, or not refuse. I find it very difficult to find an example that tells me Jim Schwartz is not an elite defensive coordinator in this world, in the NFL. Just anywhere he goes, the defense is always absolutely humming, and he gets the absolute most out of anyone at all levels. And he's just phenomenal at that. I think the funny thing will be, if that hire were to happen, the instant thing that should be happening is everyone posting an image of him being carried off the field at Ford Field. If anyone remembers, day after the Jail Mary, just fun fact. I only remember it because I was in LA randomly for that game. So it is just, that would be a home run. I do love the Jim Leonhard idea though. And I'll finish it with that, because that would kind of continue this young up and coming trend you are having this front office and coaching staff be, and you are trying to build something bigger. And Jim Leonhard definitely comes from a philosophy and tree that is extremely exciting when it comes to how to produce pressure and manufacture pressure, simulated blitzes, all of these fun, exotic looks that feel necessary in the short term for what we have currently on the roster. And I think Jim Leonhard is someone that could absolutely turn shit lemons into lemonade that are currently on roster, under contract, and what we need to do to maximize the outcome of this defense and potential. And he is someone that I feel it would be great to kind of have him work in sync with a Joe Brady, to young, promising minds that are trying to make a stamp for themselves at their current roles. And hopefully for him, that would be like the first moment he can truly unleash whatever he's trying to achieve from a NFL defensive coordinator position, to maybe potentially put a name for himself out there even more so. And I am all for springboarding a Jim Leonhard out there into the space of, if all goes well, 2-3 years time, he's becoming a head coach candidate for other teams, because his track record in the coaching world is definitely one that tells me, and tells a lot of people. Another individual, Costa, I know, is a big fan of him. You've seen it in the chat multiple times. There's not a lot to dislike about where he's coming from and what he likes to do on a defense. I definitely like the prospect of him as well. So all three of them, Raheem Morris too, like when he was the defensive coordinator for the Rams, just phenomenal work. And there was a reason he got the head coaching position quickly in Atlanta. That all three of them would be, I don't want to call them home runs, but they'd be phenomenal hires regardless.
Roy Collins asking, is Schwartz still under contract? So he is. That's fairly standard, Roy. Whenever you replace your head coach, your coaches are still under contract. But generally speaking, and I understand I'm talking about the Browns here, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's good practice to let your position coaches venture out and find other opportunities because new coaches want to bring in their own staff. The Bills did it with their special teams coordinator. They did it with their wide receivers coach, Adam Henry. I don't know that they would have wanted to bring him back the way they pretty much threw him directly under the bus with the Keon Coleman thing at the press conference last week. But and then there was a report today from, I think, Rap Sheet that basically said that the Browns really want to keep him unless Schwartz makes it uncomfortable, but Schwartz is prepared to make it uncomfortable. Schwartz is more appealing to me than Jim Leonhard just for one specific, well, two reasons. One, I like the head coaching experience. I like the fact that he's been there on game day to be the Wade Phillips to Sean McVay for Joe Brady. I also like the fact that, I don't feel like Jim Schwartz is ever going to be a head coach again in this league. I think he could be the Bills' Steve Spagnuolo, where it's basically defensive coordinator for as long as you want Joe Brady to be your head coach, where I do think that Jim Leonhard could be here for a year or two and then become a head coach. That's really the differentiating factor for me because I think Jim Leonhard is going to be a star in this league. And then Perry Fuel, much of the same with Jim Schwartz. I think it's a little easier for me to see Perry Fuel getting another shot at a head coach, although, 3 kicks at the can is somewhat unlikely, I would think. And I don't think he has the extensive track record of Schwartz. But, when you start talking about what makes them different, Jim Leonhard, a little more of like a 3-man front, which I think would require a little bit more personnel changes from the Bills, where I do think what the Bills have in house with Schwartz would be, a little more ready to go. There's going to have to be personnel changes because these guys fit the McDermott defense. But whether you're talking about Leonhard or Schwartz or even Raheem Morris, what I love is the simplification of the defense. These guys are going to be able to play fast. The McDermott defense was so complicated, and I thought Tyler Dunn's piece put it best. That is why Dane Jackson, Jordan Phillips, Shaq Lawson, Balin Spector kept getting brought back, and why we kept getting frustrated with rookies and young players and newer guys, Poona Ford, not being able to get on the field because so much mentally was asked about these players that they couldn't play fast. And I don't want you to take that as like these guys were dumb or that the Leonhard, Schwartz, Morris defenses are so simple that a dumb player can play. It's not that. I mean, but there is something to be said for like, go play, don't think. And that's where I think McDermott's defense lost a lot of talent, and hopefully we're going to see that. All right. Offensive coordinator. Joe Lombardi from the Broncos got fired yesterday. That kind of surprised a lot of people. He's a guy that goes back with Joe Brady. There's a couple of in-house options. I think Ronald Curry's a guy that could get a look on the Bills. One name that I can't stop thinking about, though, and I don't think it would be the most exciting hire, is Anthony Lynn. And Anthony Lynn checks a couple boxes for the Bills. So he's been an offensive coordinator before, 1 year in Detroit, and he got replaced by Ben Johnson. Good move, Detroit. But if Joe Brady's calling the plays, it's not that they need a play caller, but they are missing the big piece of run game coordinator that Aaron Kromer filled in, and that is Anthony Lynn's specialty. He is a running back coach that has been the run game coordinator for the Commanders the last 2 years, and he was on the same offense as Aaron Kromer in Buffalo under the Rex Ryan, Greg Roman regime. So he's very familiar with, I would assume, the offensive line and running game system that the Bills want to run. So all of that being said, plus Anthony Lynn is a former head coach. I like getting experienced guys on the staff. It wouldn't wow you, but I do think it's important to keep in mind what the Bills are going to be asking from their offensive coordinator. It's much more of a teaching job, Monday through Saturday versus scheming and coming up with the right play call and play cadence on Sunday. That's going to be Joe Brady's job. And I think somebody like Anthony Lynn is somebody that would check the box they're looking for, even though he probably wouldn't be my top choice. What are you thinking as far as OC goes? As I see you just ban somebody, which I always am a fan of.
um, how do I put this? I would like someone that can challenge Joe Brady, but also be on the same page. And I don't know if I have exactly a name that I even like fixate to and feel like would be the perfect candidate. The Lynn connection, I definitely would say there is some intrigue by it in the sense of everything laid out when it comes to potentially trying to supplement what you got out of a Cromer and everything that you had in the run game, trying to bring something over that can continue the success where you had there. Anthony Lynn is definitely someone that feels very capable of doing that. So as long as we don't have a drop off in what we were able to achieve in the run game and everything you had with your offensive line dominance and whatnot, I'm all for that. My biggest thing is I need someone that can be. I am someone that believes success that comes from friction, and you need someone that's not necessarily a yes man. You need someone that is also there because they want to make sure all the right decisions are being made and things. And Joe Brady's going to have a lot on his plate that I would like someone else that's can be a dependable individual that also is fully capable of doing the job themselves. And I don't know who the best person is for that, whether it is an Anthony Lynn or whether it is someone that we didn't even discuss or have named yet tonight. That I want someone that's going to challenge Joe Brady, but also be doing it in the sense of they're trying to get something across the line. Joe Brady might get blinded by the lights. Joe Brady might have a lot on his plate with the game where you're just leaning on this individual and they do need to take over and just steady the ship offensively, whatever it is, and understand what the total philosophy is and understand what the game plan was going in and stuff, and not let the emotions of the head coaching position get to who your primary play caller is, being Joe Brady. It needs to be someone that is there that also can remind Joe Brady what was discussed the entirety of the week going into it, and don't just change the game plan because you feel like in that moment as you're a head coach, this is what we need to do. This is how we discuss things. I think that is something that feels very necessary. You also need someone that's a little bit, if Joe Brady's going to continue to be a player's coach and be, a friend to a Josh Allen and stuff, you kind of need that. And this is going to be a weird name to drop here, but it recently just happened across league circles. I know Weston Brewster is very aware of this. You need that Bieniemy that can kind of be that pain in the ass to the offense, but also who understands exactly what they're trying to do. And it feels like there was a drop off after he left Kansas City that then is returning to them, because you need that friction there that can keep the drive going and keep the message across the board to all offensive personnel, as well as your head coach who is calling the plays, to just make sure everything is steady and ready to go and move forward week in, week out. And I will say off the top of my head, Anthony Lynn makes a lot of sense, but ultimately whoever it is, I won't have any opinion of them until the games start rolling around, because we know who the primary play caller is. So I need to see what is going on the sideline, up above, stuff like that. We need to see, 4, 5, 6 weeks of results to understand what is happening from the offensive side of the ball for me to truly understand if the offensive coordinator is the appropriate hire or not, because anything prior to that, to me, is just kind of going through the motions, and it's secondary stuff. I don't think you'll even know who the right person is until the games start rolling.
I think that's fair. Costa says that Shieldhouse would be a very interesting hire. I agree. Nate Shieldhouse was another name this cycle that was gaining some steam despite never calling plays before. It was announced today that he's going to stay in LA with the Rams. I think he was a finalist for the Browns job, and when he didn't get it, he's decided just to stay on the McVay tree, which, I mean, you can certainly understand. I mean, what a what a fast track that's been for so many guys. Luka, sometimes they say the perfect tweet doesn't exist, but I just saw it on Twitter. It's not even Bills related, but the Browns hired a new coach today, Todd Monken, which I know broke some Giants fans' hearts, and I get it because I think people thought that he was going to be going to the Giants as the offensive coordinator, but I guess Browns fans are not pleased, and I also get that. And I saw one Browns account say the criticism of Monken is he didn't play Derrick Henry in the big moments. Rest easy, fellow Browns fans. We don't have any big moments. I loved that. What a tweet. What an amazing tweet. So with that, let's see. Anything else we haven't talked to regarding this bill search? The press conference is tomorrow. You think Pagula speaks? My prediction is
No.
he introduces Bean, introduces Joe Brady, and then steps to the side.
Yes.
I think there's so many questions that reporters like realize we should have asked that after Pagula kind of went off the rails last week that they're not going to give him more availability. I think Bean could be in for it a little bit tomorrow.
I think they are absolutely going to drive a message of this is a different press conference. We are moving forward. All questions need to be directed at Joe Brady and the vision we have of this team moving forward. I imagine the word forward, moving forward. We are progressing forward. All of those kinds of things are going to be said at length and a lot. So, I would love to believe that Terry will be, yes, the soft introduction. We have made the decision to hire or promote Joe Brady as now our new head coach, blah, blah, blah. Do the whole applause, shake hands BS. I'm curious how much applause will be. I imagine you'll get your pretty typical stuff from the media people. And then also I will, what's funny? Following the previous press conference, the one reaction to it from the national side of things that I did not expect, Josh, was the amount of appreciation a lot of national and I'm talking about pro sports talk, pro football talk, PFT, a lot of different things. Sorry, I said PFT, PMT. A lot of them commended the local media for not just softball questioning that presser, and that's truly what led to what it felt like the entirety of its length and the conversation that sparked many quotable Terry Pagula moments and kind of had been a little bit on edge with certain questions and answers that he was delivering. And I am curious to see how the local media handles Joe Brady in this sense, because it's like everyone is aware of the fan reaction to the hire, media included. So it feels as if it's a situation and a potential for them to then just lean on this more so and kind of put Brady under the fire a little bit. Put Brady under the fire about the receiver. See what he will say about the receiver position, about Keon Coleman, about everything like that. Not necessarily in his response to what took place last week, but just also what his insight is to what is needed on this roster. What does he feel? Because of you didn't bring in, as we mentioned, you didn't bring in a new body. You didn't bring in someone that was coming from the outside, evaluating the situation where that question would just be met with, it felt like on tape, there we're lacking at the receiver, but anything. It's like, no, this guy has been in the building this entire time. He has legitimate input as to what has been happening and what he believes should happen moving forward. So I wonder if the media will do another great job, and props to them. It's not something that I feel like I find myself saying a lot when it comes to professional sports press conferences or questioning and things like that. They did do a very good job of not overreaching, but making sure they weren't just giving absolute layups and softball questions to those sitting there behind the mics, and made sure they tried to get the answers that they understand listeners and fans are trying to receive. So I'm very, very, very intrigued to see how they handle this presser tomorrow from a media perspective. And that's my entire being right now. And fun fact, anyone still listening, I know there's 33 currently on YouTube and there's plenty more elsewhere. Appreciate you. Joe Brady will be on McAfee as well shortly after that at 1:30. I will be intrigued to see, one, how the presser goes and if that will continue on McAfee, and two, how McAfee and those individuals, say what you will about them, They seem to get interesting quotes, and they come from it a different angle when it comes to questioning things. That will be intriguing to me as well when it comes to how Joe Brady handles that, because when you have a Bean or McDermott, I don't believe ever made an appearance on the show, maybe once. I almost feel like you knew what the answers and how that would be handled.
Mhm.
I have no idea how Joe Brady's going to handle a McAfee interview. So that will be another one that I will be absolutely tuned in for, and intrigued to see how he responds.
I was gonna bring that up if you didn't, because I think that's a great look at the person. Because
Yeah.
what McAfee, what Bussin' with the Boys, what PMT does is they get the real person out of you. They get you comfortable enough to say things you otherwise wouldn't say if a microphone was around. Like Mike Vrabel saying he would cut off his penis to win a Super Bowl. Now there's a clip from Hard Knocks where Joe Brady runs into the Bussin' with the Boys guys, and he was all upset that he didn't wear his gear that day, and they dapped up each other. I think there's a pretty good chance Joe Brady comes off really good tomorrow. He
Oh yeah.
seems like one of the guys.
Yeah.
He's younger. I think Joe Brady has a real chance to kill it tomorrow. I don't know if the Bills have announced this yet, but Josh Allen's speaking tomorrow too. I don't know if he's going to like be in the press conference or brought up after, but he's going to be there too. So I think that's going to, that's going to soften the blow for a lot of Bills fans. Throw Josh Allen out there, and it's hard to hate anything he says. Yeah, I'm fascinated by the press conference. I'm excited to see what Brady says, because even to your point, on the wide receiver situation, you're no longer like the offensive coordinator that needs to stay in his lane and defer. You are the head football coach.
Yep.
It is absolutely appropriate for you to go out there and say, "Yeah, we need to look at that position and get some I mean, I don't expect any coach on January
Yeah.
29th to say like, "Oh, we suck at that position. We got to get better." But he can say it without saying it. Like, we're certainly aware of how important that position is and how important playmakers are, and we're going to turn over every stone. Like, that kind of messaging will calm a lot of fears tomorrow from a lot of fans that I think are still thinking that McDermott was shown the door because he said the thing that we're all thinking about the Bills is they don't think they need receivers. I'm getting the sense as these 2 weeks have gone on that McDermott was a little snakier behind the scenes than maybe he was letting on. And, you can kind of look into some situations where things he said at press conferences, not taking accountability for certain things, and Tyler Dunn uncovering that after the way he took over play calling for 13 seconds and then told the offense they left too much time on the clock. Like, dude, just wear that one. After he told the special teams coordinator wanted to squib it, and McDermott overruled him. It was just like the ultimate. Ugh, what are you gonna do? But I'm excited for tomorrow. The press conference will be fun. Luka, give me 2 minutes on the Sabres. What a wagon they are.
Sorry, let me get a deep breath in here. We are, and I say we because this has been a hell of a ride. The Sabres are a machine right now.
Mm-hmm.
Shit pumping the Leafs on their home ice last night was the absolute perfect thing needed from any Buffalo sports fan. I'm going to talk about the Leafs win primarily because one, it was the one that happened most recently, but it's a thing where that was the first game, and it felt like in a stretch where the typical thing wasn't Sabres going to an early lead, kind of maintaining it, maybe having a shit middle period being the second period, still having a 1-goal lead, and then just locking it down in the third period. That is something that's been common. They did it in Montreal, I want to say last week. They did it in Nashville as well. Previous to that, it was a little bit of a trend. They even did that during their 10-game win streak, where they had a couple where I think Flyers were in there. It was post win streak. Regardless, last night they scored a goal, overruled, absolutely rightfully so, by an offside. Then from there went down 1-0, went down 2-1. And previous teams on the road of this exact same core would find it difficult or almost press the issue too much, that then that 2-1 deficit becomes a 3-1 deficit, maybe by the end of the first period, maybe to start the second period, whatever it is. This team to me showed something even greater by not blinking, still doing their thing. They were flying around doing their thing. They got a couple breaks go their way. Josh Doan's goal, hilarious when it comes to breaks, just trying to whip it across, hits stick, catches the goalie going the other way. You end up with a 3-2 lead after one. You lost your goalie as well, and you have Colton Ellis coming in cold midway through that first period, and still to just dominate and go forward the way you were, end it with Dahlin's first career hat trick. Just continue to show that you can win at all levels. You can be consistent. You can do things differently and still get positive results. I'll get on that in a second. This is a team that is definitely showing they are legitimate, and I think everyone is taking notice. It's a beautiful thing. It feels like the Jets will be the only franchise left to have a playoff drought of 10 plus years in all of North American professional sports following this. Fingers crossed. The last little thing, too, is the Rangers put out today that Panarin is officially scratched due to roster management reasons, and he will not be in the lineup before the Olympic break, which is in a week, I believe. It's a week and a couple days. That is noteworthy because there are natural links to Panarin and the Sabres through Jarmo Kekalainen. He is the individual that is definitely highlighted back in his Columbus days when it comes to Panarin coming to the NHL and doing his thing early on. And Panarin feels like an absolute player that could just elevate everything. And the biggest issue the Sabres have right now is power play. You bring in a guy like Panarin, who's obviously a proven goal scorer and someone who absolutely will do everything he can to put the puck in the net. It doesn't feel as if it's a move that would kind of rattle the cage too much from a full ice length game. That I love the idea of it. And it would, if we were to move for Panarin, if the Sabres were to move for a Panarin, that would truly be a great first stamp to Jarmo recognizing, hey, we need to do something, because I think Costa, you're killing it right now. It would most likely take a Tuck plus in order, or, there would be manufacturing of what it would take. You would have to move on from an Alex Tuck. That is tough. That is understandably tough. Tuck is one of the better, if not best, two-way forwards in this league. He's an absolute dog and someone you want to have in the playoffs. But at the same time, you're not going to be able, after extending Josh Doan for the money you have an upcoming extension for Zach Benson, which feels pretty necessary if you want to keep things humming the way that they are. Tuck feels to be the sacrificial lamb, being that he is asking for the money that he is. And overall, if you can get someone to make this season maximize the way it can be with the Panarin by moving on from Tuck and still acquiring value for Alex Tuck, rather than letting him walk in the offseason because you are unable to pay him the 10.5, 11 plus million that he looks to be looking for. It's a sad but necessary thing that I would love to see Jarmo kind of put his stamp on and fully grasp the concept of, hey, I am doing things for the betterment of this team. We understand who Alex Tuck is to this fan base. We understand what he is to this roster. Unfortunately, this is the direction we need to move forward with in order to maximize what we have both this season as well as seasons moving forward, and understand that this is a business decision that did not come easy. That is what I imagine that move comes with. It's just, you have to do something to keep this train rolling and maybe make something when it comes to making a run in the playoffs. And I will add this. There's a weird situation, Josh, that the Sabres currently sit in the 3 spot of the Atlantic. The Metropolitan is very weak. I find myself in a weird spot where I make the playoffs. I don't give a shit where. But there's also wild card 1 would be beautiful, because you're most likely then going into that bracket. NHL playoffs are terrible. You go into the bracket with the Metropolitan, where you probably have a better shot at making a run as long as you get through Carolina, rather than having to play Detroit potentially if you're in that 2-3, it feels like, and then have to play Tampa unless Tampa were to be upset by the last wild card spot. So just something that, it's a weird thing to be as a Sabres fan late January, thinking about playoff seeding and where I'd rather be and stuff like that. But the simple matter of the fact is, boy, this is awesome to be sitting here because I have not been able to legally drink the last time the Sabres made a playoffs. And it really, really feels like that drought's coming to an end. And thank God, because, we just, it's exciting to turn on Sabres games 2, 3, 4 times a week and actually have hope and trust that positive results will come. And it's a fun time to be a Sabres fan, Josh. Appreciate I was not expecting this, so that was all off the top here, but it's love everything about it.
Well, so I actually am going to ask you a very important question here. And now I am not Mr. Hockey, but if the Rangers have the least amount of points in the East, why would they be motivated to trade for Tuck, who's on an expiring deal? Is there something about NHL offseason where you get like compensatory picks or something like that?
They're trying to restructure everything. They're trying to rebuild, and they're in a weird predicament where Sammy, for anyone that doesn't understand, that is my lovely wife, Sammy. She is a Rangers fan. LOL.
Hi, Sammy. I'm not laughing at the Rangers. I saw the Blues last night.
In hockey, you obviously, if you're not doing well, you're a seller. It's typical to any sport. You want to be a seller. But the Rangers are in a weird spot where you have Igor Shesterkin on a massive contract, one of the better goalies in this league. And it feels like 2 seasons ago, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals, Josh. Like there are quality things about them, but it feels as if the players in-house got stale with what was taking place by GM Chris Drury. So now
that
Drury
name sounds familiar.
Yes, it does. So Drury has this task at his hands where he needs to turn over the roster, but also build a winner quick, which is possible as long as you get the right pieces. Panarin is going to be moved. There is no reason for them to maintain Panarin. He is one of those key pieces that just needs to be moved on from. There are other individuals on that roster as well. Vinny Trocheck could be another name that will be on the trading market, I would imagine, by the deadline. Another name that I would honestly not mind see come to the Sabres if it was possible. But it's you bring in a Tuck, you extend him, you have the finances to, and it feels like Tuck can become one of those new pillars that then maybe turns things around quickly. You still have Adam Fox, one of the best defensemen in the league. You have Igor Shesterkin locked up. He is one of the better goaltenders in the league. He's hurt right now. That's the reason they've kind of really slid, to be quite frank. And you have other guys in there that a quick turnaround does feel possible. That now you're just getting out, the old regime, bringing in some new bodies and just redefining who the Rangers are. So it's a weird situation, Josh. I'm with you. It's like, why would you trade for Tuck when he's just going to walk? Well, the thing is, he might not. He might be one of those core pieces you want to kind of lead the charge into the next regime. And Tuck is absolutely a guy who checks a lot of boxes when it comes to phenomenal two-way game, can still be a 30 goal scorer, as well as, there are leadership qualities about him that, a lot of NHL organizations love, Sabres included for that matter, that, it checks a lot of boxes for them. If they were to move a Panarin or Trocheck to then bring in an Alex Tuck, you would imagine, that's a situation too, where discussions through agencies, whatever, are happening, that if they're going to move for him, Josh, I'm sure they've already moved along contract talks and are like, hey, we will get you that $11 million number that you want. So, yeah. And Costa says it too, like Panarin will not be re-signing with New York. So you're just trying to get as much asset as you possibly can if you're the Rangers.
I think it'd be an exciting move for the Sabres. I mean, they've already done so much to turn this season around, and it looks legit, not smoke and mirrors. And then to make a move like this at the deadline that's coming up in early March to like really give yourself a boost heading into the playoffs would be amazing. I'm so excited for Sabres fans that they're here. I'm certainly into it. Like, I'm not a diehard Sabres fan, but I'm just happy for you all. Sabres are back on the ice tomorrow night against the Kings, and I believe they have 5 more games until the break.
Yeah, so it's a home game tomorrow night against the Kings, and then they're on a 3-game road trip. I can't recall who. And then
all to Florida, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's the Florida trip and then someone else mixed in there. Maybe no, because Pittsburgh's at home.
Pittsburgh's the last game.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's the goodbye for Olympics kind of deal. And if they can go into the Olympic break, Josh, kind of still humming this way, I'm going to
Yeah.
be a little sad that the Olympic break came, because you obviously want to just keep the train rolling. But it's just to be at the All-Star break, obviously this year being the Olympic break, and be one of the best teams in the league when it comes to, I mean, 19-3-1 in their last stretch is just an unreal number. There's only two other teams potentially that are matching that, being the Colorado Avalanche. And I know I think Tampa is also incredibly hot of late. So it's just beautiful. And the cherry on top of it all, Josh, is watching the Leafs fans just across the border absolutely crash out at their dumpster fire organization, not making moves, still failing to win games. Nothing's going right. And they have to sit there and watch, what they believe to be a meme organization that is the Buffalo Sabres absolutely pump them and pump the NHL as they keep rolling things along. It's just chef's kiss.
It's the theory that the Bills and Sabres just can't be good at the same time.
It's impossible.
I mean, the one time they both were good at the same time was 99. Let's talk about that. No goal and Music City Miracle. Yay. All right. On that, what a time to be alive. All right. Well, Luka, this is going to go up on our audio podcast network as well, because we are in the off season. Obviously, if anything big happens at this point, we'll come on and do a podcast. I would expect, we haven't really talked about it, but I would expect that our next show, we'll be recapping the coaching staff, and then we still got to do how'd the season go? Let's talk about the rookie class and all that kind of stuff. So we're still going to be here. It just won't be as frequent, but enjoyed hanging out with all you tonight, talking about Bills coaches, Bills staff changes. Changes are coming for the Bills. Maybe not as many as we were hoping for, but here we are. We can all watch the Super Bowl together with the Patriots and move on. But for Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We're going to give our friend East Malise the final word here. I can't wait. Go Bills. We love when you hang out. And Luka all-time draft videos. We love the Chiefs fans who still come because of how Luka reacted when they traded out of that Xavier Worthy pick. And I mean it, like we've gotten so many loyal Chiefs fans that are here all the time because of that. And I love it. So anyway, for Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We will talk to you next time on Bills Chat.